Are you worried about falling and you want a simple way to improve your balance? If you are, then this video is perfect for you. If you don't know who I am, my name is Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties specialist physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to be giving you my 7-step balance plan to prevent falls and improve your balance. Now, falls are an enormous problem worldwide. They're a leading cause of injury and disability for people over 50. I know for a fact it costs the NHS more than £2 billion per year to deal with the consequences of falls, and I would imagine that figure is much higher in the US as well. So preventing falls is a huge problem. People who are over 50 are also more likely to fracture or break something when they fall. And that population also tends to be the group of people with worse balance. So it's a bad combination. But luckily, there's a lot we can do to improve balance and prevent falls. Now, from my experience, falls are often caused by one of 3 things. The first thing that can cause a fall, obviously, is loss of balance. So people who aren't very good at balancing tend to have a higher risk of falls. The second thing is poor strength. So if you aren't very strong, especially in your core and your lower limbs, you have an increased risk of falling. And the third problem is lack of coordination. So if your coordination decreases with time as you get older, or your vestibular system, your ears, don't help you work as well as they used to, then basically you're going to have a higher risk of falls as well. Now, this 7-step plan that I've devised is going to tackle all 3 of those things. So let's have a look at the 7 exercises now. They should be suitable for people of all abilities, but if these exercises are challenging for you, then please make sure you do them with supervision. I'm also going to show you how to do them safely, but if it's not safe for you to do these, then please don't do them. Make sure you get checked out before you try them, and let's have a look at what they are now. So here's my 7-step plan for people over 50 to improve their balance. And you'll notice that I've positioned myself in the corner of 2 walls. And the reason I've done this is because this is actually one of the safest areas to practice your balance. Because if we're going to be practicing our balance and you wobble, then the worst that's going to happen is you're going to put your shoulder into this wall, or your shoulder is going to go into this wall. So if you don't have anyone around to supervise, the safest thing you can put yourself into is a corner between 2 walls, preferably not one with a door where someone's going to come in and knock you away, but hopefully that won't happen today. So let's have a look at the 7 exercises for balance. We're going to start with the easiest first, and then we're going to slowly build our way up. Your job is to just pick the one that you find most challenging, or the one that you can still do whilst it's still challenging, and practice it for 2 or 3 minutes per day. When it becomes easy and you can do the exercise for longer than a minute without feeling like it's challenging your balance, you move on to the next one. So let's have a look at the first one. And the first one we call just close stance. And all I'm going to do for this exercise is I'm going to put my feet close together. I'm going to put my hands on my hips, and I'm just going to practice balancing. So standing like this is harder than standing with our feet apart because we've narrowed our base of support, and that's made it harder for us to maintain our balance when we're in one position. Now, you'll find that you can improve your balance by focusing your gaze on one specific thing. So I'm looking directly at the camera, but I could equally pick a spot on the floor. But if I'm looking around, it becomes harder for me to maintain my balance. So pick a spot, focus on it, and if you can do 30 seconds of this, you can move on to the next step. Now, the next step of the balance plan makes this just a tiny bit harder. And for this exercise, we're going to do what we call a tandem stand. And a tandem stand is basically having one foot directly in front of the other. So you're going to imagine you're walking a tightrope. You're going to put your heel of the front foot against your toes of the back foot. And now we've narrowed our base of support even more and made this a bit harder for ourselves still. So the leg that's doing most of the balancing is the one that's at the back, and you want to keep yourself in one position with your eyes focused on one spot. You can see this is harder for me than the close stance, but if I were to wobble, the worst that would happen is I'd wobble into the wall. So you want to make sure you're safe as you do this. Now, what you should find is your feet are adjusting like this. That's a good sign. That means you're challenging it. Don't be embarrassed if that's happening. You can see it's happening for me. That's very, very normal. It actually means that you're challenging the balance centers enough for them to improve. So that's a good sign. Now, if you can balance like this for 30 seconds on both legs without feeling like you're getting a bit wobbly at all, then you're safe to move on to the next stage. Now, the third stage of my balance plan is exactly the same exercise, but we're going to do it with our eyes closed. And this is quite a jump in difficulty from doing it with eyes open. So we're going to go back into the tandem position. We're going to have our hands on our hips, and now we're just going to shut our eyes. And this instantly makes it harder because about 30% of your balance comes from your eyesight. And if you don't have your eyesight, you've instantly made the other components of balance have to work a lot harder. So this instantly makes it more difficult. You can see I can still do it, but it's more of a struggle. My feet are turning. And we want to check, obviously we can do this on both sides. Most people have one side that's better than the other. You can see that my left was actually better than my right. That's probably from years of playing football and having to stand on my left foot to kick with my right. But what we want to do is make sure we can get 30 seconds with our eyes shut. Again, doing this in a safe space so nothing bad happens. And if you can do that, you're safe to move on to the next step. Now, the fourth step for our balance plan is what we call tightrope walking. And this is one of my favorite exercises for improving balance for people in their 50s and beyond. And tightrope walking is very similar to tandem stand, but basically we're going to do it in a dynamic way. So we're going to do it with movement. So I'm going to demonstrate the tightrope walk for you. Now, what we're going to imagine is that you've got a tightrope here, hopefully not too high above the ground, but we're just going to picture that you've got a very thin line to walk along. And we're going to do exactly what we did for the tandem, putting our heel against our toes, but this time we're going to walk as we do it. Now, the best way to do this in terms of safety is to do it with a wall on one side and maybe a couple of chairs laid out on this side. I'm not going to use the chairs just so you can see what I'm doing with my legs, but what we want to do is keep our gaze facing forward if we can and just feel our heels touch our toes. And if you found that useful, you can also repeat going backwards as well, because that's another layer of difficulty added. Obviously, you can't see where you're going, but it gives you a great bit of practice in dynamic balance. So dynamic balance is balance as we're moving, which is super important. You'll also find you get a little bit of a workout, so a bit of strength added to your legs too as you do that exercise. So it's a brilliant thing to do to improve your balance. So give that a try. If you can do that for 30 seconds up and down without losing your balance at all, then you're safe to move on to the next step. Now, the fifth stage in my balance plan is single leg stand. And this again is another big jump from the tightrope walk. And this is the area that many people have problems with. So standing on one leg is a brilliant way to develop your balance. And what you want to do again is you put yourself into the corner of a wall. You're just going to lift one foot up so it's going behind you and practice standing just on the one foot. You want to keep your pelvis level so you're not doing that. And basically you're just going to practice on that 1 foot for as long as you feel you can. Now, the nice thing about doing it in a corner is if you lose your balance, you can quickly put your foot on the wall behind you or just put it down. But basically what we want to try and do is keep our balance as much as we can. And it's best to do these exercises probably in socks or bare feet if you can. But if you want to do it in shoes, that's fine as well. So practice on one side and then you can swap sides as well. Spot which one is better than the other because that can give you something to work on. And if you can do 30 seconds on each leg, you're safe to move on to the next stage. So the sixth stage of my balance plan is something I call the floor star. And this builds on top of the single leg stand. It's a really nice exercise for people who are good on their one leg and want to challenge themselves more. And it looks something like this. So you're going to go back onto just one leg. And then instead of just standing still, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and take the other leg and just touch the floor in front, touch it out to the side, touch it behind, and then touch it across ourselves. So we're not bearing any weight through this leg. It's just tapping the toes on the ground. And again, this is starting to get our dynamic balance centers working again. So it challenges us because we're moving our center of gravity around and we're having to adjust as we do it. So it's a great exercise for people who can do the single leg stand and want something a little bit more challenging. So to show you on the other side, and to make this harder for yourself, you can reach further. And if you're having to bend your knee to do it, we start to get a really nice workout of the quads and the hip on this side too. So this adds another component of strength to our program. And then the 7th step of our balance plan is to go back to single leg stand, but to do it with our eyes closed. And this is by far the hardest of all of them. So you're going to go onto one leg and shut your eyes. And again, we've made it 30% harder now. So now it's much more difficult for me to keep my balance. But once you start to get a feel for it, you can start to pick up exactly where you are in space, and that's how you improve your coordination and your proprioception, okay? So you're going to try it on both sides, and obviously you're going to spot one that's better than the other. Again, my left seems to be a little bit better than my right on this one. But if you're struggling to move on to the next stage in this process, one great thing you can do is if you have a table in front of you as well, you can start to do these exercises with just 2 fingers on the table, then 1. And then when you get comfortable, I'll do it with my eyes shut just to show you something more difficult. You can take your finger away, and if you struggle, you can put it back on. And that's a really nice way to ease yourself into a harder stage. So that's my 7-step balance plan. I hope that was useful and that you've got something from this video. So that's my 7-step balance plan for people over 50. I hope you found that video useful and that you can prevent any future falls as a result of this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment below because I love to read your comments. And if you want to get more from me, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and you can find it on Amazon using the link below. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next video.